Sometimes the universe allows for the making of unexpected memories. This episode definitely does deliver something unexpected. I'll tell you later. Right after episode 1 was, of course, episode 2. So this is Star Trek Discovery episode 2 review. And this episode is titled Battle at the Binary Stars. Kind of appropriate, but I think it's kind of simple for a title. Episode 2 picks up exactly where episode 1 left off. This is a continuous story, and that's how it's going to be throughout this series, which is quite nice. I like this style of storytelling. It's not episodic, and it's great for binge watching, of course. In this episode, we have the attempt to have a dialogue with the Klingons, but of course this is going to lead to battle. I mean, this is the Klingons, of course. And what we do get are battle scenes. And they're quite good. Unlike in a lot of other Star Trek series, it seems like it's in a 2D playing field. Like everything is on a plane. But in this, it's very 3D. And I really like that. The visuals are stunning. Again, the budget for this series must be pretty big. A lot higher than any of the other Star Treks. The sets look pretty good. I do have to admit, I like the way the Shenzhou looks on the inside. It does have a more of an Enterprise-like feel, like from Star Trek Enterprise, because it's all gray, it has blue lighting everywhere. It's very much like the earlier Star Trek, and by that I mean chronologically earlier. It's an old ship, so we should expect to see some older technology, and we do with the transporter room, which I will explain in the observations and nitpicking later on. The acting continues to be pretty good. I'm actually quite impressed with Sonequa Martin Green's acting as Michael Burnham. She is a pretty good character. I'm really intrigued by her. I'm looking forward to seeing how she develops over the series. As for Michelle Yeoh's portrayal of the Captain Giorgio, I found in this episode she seemed a little bit more wooden. I don't know, that's, I guess, in a way Kirkish. But she didn't seem to be totally into the role, but maybe that's just the way she acts. And the Klingons continue to look very interesting. I don't mean their appearance, I mean the culture. So we are going to be seeing a lot more about the culture. We're going to be seeing a lot about what the Klingons are all about. But one thing that does bother me a little bit is that they speak much slower. They speak so slowly compared to other Star Trek series. Of course, I still feel that communication via view screen is better than holographic. I don't know, I'm just old school in that way. Because in other Star Trek series, it's always on screen. Even in, the 24th century. But the action is good. We get plenty of fighting. We got plenty of fighting in the original Star Trek, so this kind of mirrors that time as well. And I really enjoyed the story as well. It ended up going a direction I didn't expect. As I said in the beginning, it was a little unexpected. But I don't really know how the ending sets with me. It just feels like something different could have been done. But that's just me. But despite that feeling, I would still give this episode 4 stars out of 5. It was pretty good. And again, it's not excellent, but it is very promising. It's a very promising start to the series. Alright, now it's time for some nitpicking and observations. Now, please be warned that there are spoilers in this part. In the beginning, we see a lot of Klingon ships coming in. There are 24 to be exact, and they all represent one house of the great houses of the Klingon Empire. But none of them seem familiar. They don't have the standard design that we're used to. But it could just be that these are flagships, and these are run by the heads of these houses. And when we see some of the other heads of the houses, they do look a bit different from each other. Different styles. The uniforms are different. Even one of them had a headdress, which was interesting. So maybe we'll see a few other appearances, different looks. And we also heard from 3 different houses. The House of Kor, the House of Dagor, and the House of Mokai. Now these 3 houses exist in the 24th century in The Next Generation. And of course the House of Kor, you know who Kor is? Kor is the first Klingon we see in the original series. One of the big questions about technology in this series has been the transporter room of the Shenzhou. Why does it look like that? Well, it's lateral vector transporter technology, which is old-fashioned and it's been discontinued. So this is an old ship, so we have an old-style transporter room. On the USS Discovery, I'm pretty sure we're going to see a much more standard-looking transporter room. Now, the Klingons mentioned Donatu 5. Now, there was a battle between the Klingons and the Federation in 2245, which is before this series, of course, 11 years before. Now, Donatu 5 was first mentioned in the original series episode, The Trouble with Tribbles. And so, here it is mentioned again. It's nice to see that they're being consistent with the history of Star Trek. T'Kuvma also mentions humans, Vulcans, Tellarites, and Andorians. And these are, of course, the 4 founders of the Federation. So they are quite well known to the Klingons, of course. But it is nice to hear them by name. Now, going back to the Federation ships, they mentioned that there were at least 15 decks on the USS Shenzhou. Now, looking at the ship and looking at the damage that was done to it, Burnham was on the 9th deck. I'm wondering which way they're counting, because the bridge is on the bottom. Are they counting up? But then the warp nacelle pylons kind of arc downward. So it's really hard to tell which side of the ship is deck 1. So I really don't know. But 15 decks? I'm not so sure. It doesn't seem that big. And during the battle, we see that the phaser fire is pulses, not beams. That just seems a bit inconsistent. The other Federation ships came in, and they seem to have fairly standard designs. A lot of them are very reminiscent of the NX class. So that must have been the primary design that went all the way up until the 23rd century. And they have 2 or 4 warp nacelles for each ship, which is pretty normal. Some of the ships have a little bit more blockier design, some are more aerodynamic. So you get a bit of a variety there too. Ensign Connor is obviously not used to fighting. Well, he is an ensign, of course, but this also makes me believe that Starfleet has been in peace for a very long time. They don't fight much at all. In fact, they pretty much say, we're explorers, we're not soldiers. In this episode, we get to see our first example of a Vulcan mind meld. This was between Sarek and Burnham. But what's interesting here is they're able to communicate over a very long distance. This is because part of Sarek's katra is in Burnham's mind, so they're able to communicate, which is a very unconventional way to communicate. It stresses Sarek a lot. But there is one issue that I have with this. Burnham says that they are 1,000 light years apart. Now, the location of the Shenzhou is kind of near Gamma Hydra. I think it was 6 light years from Gamma Hydra, and Gamma Hydra is 133.8 light years from Earth. I don't think they're 1,000 light years apart, unless Sarek has gone way out to the other side of the Federation. Vulcan is quite close to Earth. It can't be that far. On the technology side again, hull breaches are sealed by force fields. But the first time that we saw this chronologically in Star Trek is in Star Trek Generations. We never see it in the original series, and we never see it in any of the original series movies either. So, why didn't we? We got a bit of an up-close look at the USS Europa. Looking at the design of that ship, it kind of reminds me of the Miranda class, but it has 4 nacelles instead. Also, it has that red stripe marking that you see on any Starfleet ship, especially around original series. And it has the Starfleet insignia on it. Now this is pretty consistent, so that's nice. But I think for the Europa, the bridge is on the top rather than the bottom. Lieutenant Saru mentions that they have worker bees. If you don't know what a worker bee is, then you probably aren't a Star Trek fan. But these are little craft that are used for maintenance and construction. You have probably seen them if you've seen the original series movies, especially in the first movie and I believe the 5th movie. Yeah. So there are worker bees who are just tiny. They're piloted by one person and they can be fit with different tools. Now they have some on the Shenzhou and they were going to use them. But my point is, I was glad to hear them by their name. And now we're coming to our final fight. It appears that Vok has red blood, not pink blood. So maybe what I saw in episode 1 wasn't pink, but it looked pink. Actually kind of magenta. In episode 1, they were able to scan the coffins on the outside of the Klingon ship and find that there's Klingon biological material in each of those. Also, they're able to detect the bodies of the Klingons in space. So why didn't they just lock on to any human DNA or human biological substances on the Klingon ship and beam it aboard the Shenzhou? They could have retrieved Giorgio's body. And finally, why did they escape the Shenzhou in escape pods? I mean, the ship is adrift, but they could have been transported by another ship. So instead, a ship has to collect all of those escape pods. Unless there were no ships around to collect them and life support was failing on the Shenzhou. Not enough information. So what did you think of this episode? Let me know in the comment section below. And will you continue watching the series? Here in Canada, we're actually pretty lucky because Space, which is the network we can watch Star Trek Discovery on here, is airing it every week on TV. So we don't have to stream it all the time. But of course, we are able to stream it on Space's website. We can also stream it on Crave TV if we have a subscription, which we don't. But I'm very glad I can watch the whole series on TV. If you like this video, then please give it a big thumbs up. And if you want to see some more Star Trek episode reviews, then please subscribe down below. And you can check out the next and previous episodes on that side. And also down below is the playlist. Thanks for watching. Live long and prosper.